born and stillborn.
Yes.
That's a true story.
It's a true story.
So dad told you this story, or mom, or nurses?
So both of them. Growing up, it's kind of a story that has always stuck with me ever since I could remember. You know, obviously I don't remember it because I was a newborn baby. But essentially the story goes is I was born pronounced dead at birth. My mom had a lot of complications giving birth to me. It was a scheduled C-section, so there was supposed to be nothing wrong. But then I came out and I wasn't breathing when I came out of my mother's womb. And, you know, they were panicking and the doctors were like trying to, you know, get it all together. And my dad was in the waiting room, so obviously they went and broke the news to him. But my dad at the time, he was a brand new pastor, so he was really strong in his faith. Even at like a young age, he still knew that God was there. And so he refused to accept that news from the doctor. He said, no, my baby is not dead. And my wife isn't going to die either, because they had told them that they lost me and now they were losing my mom.
That's madness.
So he was in a waiting room in St. Joseph's Hospital. This is where I was born, in Santa Ana, California. And he said, thank you very much for the news, but I'm just going to pray. And they gave him a paper. It was sort of like a death certificate, which is a terrible thing that they do. I mean, all this crazy stuff is happening, and right in the midst of it, they try to get you to sign off on a paper so that you don't sue the hospital. And I guess they do this, I've heard recently that they do this in all different kinds of emergencies. But they were trying to get my dad to sign this paper, but he refused to sign the paper. And so the doctor left the room and he said, I'm just going to pray. He called the pastor of his church at that time and the other leaders who were involved in the church. And he said, look, I'm not going to tell you exactly what's going on, but I just need you to pray. Because
was he in the same room with you? Did he see you?
No, he didn't see me yet. He was still, I think they asked him to leave the room, because usually when something's wrong, they'll ask the father to leave the room. And so he didn't really know what was going on until the doctor came a couple minutes later and broke that news to him. And so he knelt on the floor. There was a phone next to him, and he tells this testimony amazing, because obviously this is a testimony for him as well. And he picked up the phone and he called his pastor at the time, along with a couple of other leaders at the church. And he said, look, there's something wrong. I'm not going to tell you exactly what it is, but I just need you to pray. So they all started praying. And within 10 minutes, I started to breathe again. I started to cry. And so that miracle happened in the emergency room when they were trying to do everything they could to save me. But to this day, the doctor, his name's Dr. Ferrantino. He's passed away now, but growing up, I used to see him.
He's Italian as well.
He must have been,
That's why you're alive, bro.
That could
Italians,
be Italians and Italians. But I talked to him growing up, and I used to see him as a kid, and every time he'd see me, he'd say, there's the miracle baby. He doesn't even really know how it happened. But I know how it happened. It was God. It was the power of God, and I truly believe that 100%. Meanwhile, while this was all happening, I was okay. I started to breathe again, but they were still having trouble with my mom. So my dad continued to pray along with the other leaders of the church and his pastor at the time. And my mom came out of that trouble too. And she didn't even know what had happened. She was knocked out the entire time. So when she woke up, they gave her a day or two before they told the story to her. But she ended up being all right, and I ended up being okay. They even told me that growing up I was going to have some complications. They said that I was going to have some learning disabilities and I might not be able to walk and that kind of stuff. And
how little did they know?
What was that?
How little did they know back then?
I know. They didn't know much, because back then the technology was so different too, and the way that these doctors were educated and trained was so different than it is today. So they didn't really know these things. But with prayer and with faith and continuing to believe and stand on scriptures, I was able to grow up, I assume, pretty normal, hopefully. Sometimes I'm like, maybe there's something wrong with me and nobody's telling me. But I think I turned out okay.
Have you ever had this feeling that you're special?
Yeah, sometimes. Like, what if I'm retarded and nobody's telling me,
I thought you were going to say, maybe I'm Jesus. Maybe that's the second coming.
Oh, yeah, that's
retarded,
I thought you were talking about like special in terms of like autistic. Because they said that I was going to be that way, maybe. They said that growing up, I could have possibly have been back then they called it mentally retarded. You know, that
Bro, you
I
told me
could've
that
been
American
way.
pizza is better than the Italian one. You are retarded.
I know, I gotta learn, man. There's some things that I have to learn. That's a conversation for another time.
Once again, YouTube. So that's a joke, right? That's allegedly.
Oh,
No
yeah.
one's retarded here.
Oh no,
No one's joking about the retarded people.
No.